So welcome to our afternoon session with me, your host for the next little while. We're going to be looking at our food bev offerings specifically, but more importantly than that, we're going to be talking about some of the things that affect us in the hospitality and the retail industry in terms of food handling and what we do with food handling inside of our space as well. So I manage a project outside of Mauriceburg called the Mauriceburger. We have a registered Food Bev CETA registered site there, which offers baking and different bakery skills programs. In that space, we have a customized kitchen, and you'll see some of it through some of the footage that we're going to cover over the next little while. So I'm going to move over and we're going to look at the first part where I would like to understand your world of work, and I'm going to populate a Google form link into our chat box. And with the Google form link, if you would please click and complete the survey that we have for you. I'm also going to move over and look at the results page in a little while. So please click on the Google Forms link in your chat box. And if we could have a look at some of those questions in that specific document. So I'm going to change over my screen. All right, so we have on the screen in front of us the survey questions that I've put together for you guys to help us understand where we sit and where you all come from in this particular industry. So if you could take a few moments to respond to this Google survey. The link is in the chat box. Click on the link in the chat box and it will take you to the survey. So I see that there are some responses that have started to come through as well. And we're going to change over and look at some of the questions and some of the responses so far. If we just give a few more moments, there's still a few more responses coming through. Okay. So as we have a look, it's just a very brief overview to see who our visitors are for today. So you can see we've had a number of responses so far. There are still more coming in, and let's start having a look at some of that. So what type of businesses do we operate in? We can see that we've got some retail-based businesses, there's hospitality-based businesses, food-based businesses, and other. And then one of the other questions that I've posed is how many persons are actually working in your business? 1 to 5, 6 to 20, or 50 plus. So gathering from the 6 to 20 response, we're sitting with a group of individuals who have small businesses or medium enterprises, and it's a very nice it's very nice for us to understand in our size businesses what the impacts of what we are going to be discussing are all about. Then the question around what type of business do you operate? We've got a food retail business which provides fresh or dry products and services. We've got normal food business which is service based, and there's strange enough no food businesses who are preparation based with pre-packed goods or pre-prepared foods for the selling. And then we've got two who are all of the above. So it's a combination of all of those. And then the very important question, and why we're having this topic of discussion for today, is your business legally compliant with food legislation? So there are 3 yes responses, there are 2 no responses, and there's one that is not entirely sure about what is going on in the space of legislation. And then very importantly as well, do you encourage your staff by providing training opportunities? Inside of the spaces that we are in and that we operate in, we tend to work with people who have a number of people from disadvantaged communities or from disadvantaged backgrounds who've not necessarily been exposed to all the requirements that we have. Those training opportunities that we offer help those people to engage with their customers in a better manner, and also to develop themselves from a personal level to ensure that they are growing in their own career and their own chosen paths. So I'm going to change over my screens again, and we are going to go back to our presentation screen. I'm having a look at some of the responses. There is one there, very interesting question around compliance. Another one from Lisa. Lisa saying the legislation is very critical. And Gawa also sharing, it's great to see a very positive response on upskilling. That's a very important one for me as well, because it means that there is growth and development of the people that interact in our organizations. So we are going to go back to our presentation. And we're going to move forward to some of the legislative demands for businesses in the hospitality and retail sectors. So I've got somebody who's made a comment around hoping that we are going to discuss Regulation 638, and that is one of the big topics of discussion for all of us at this point in time, and what happens around our businesses. So from a hospitality and retail sector perspective, there are a few important acts that have a big effect on what we do. The first one is the Health Act, number 63 of 1977. And this Health Act actually gives us all the requirements of what we should do. It mandates and it governs what we import in and out of our businesses, how we import the things that we do with the goods that we import, as well as the goods that we export, making sure that we follow all those requirements. The second part of legislation that drives most of what we do is Occupational Health and Safety Act. So OHSA regulates pretty much everyone in the employment sector, but it does have specific needs and specific drives in terms of our food sector. And with that particular need that they've got, we've got the Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act, number 54 of 1972. So this regulation 638 that was referred to earlier on sits inside of this specific legislation of Foodstuffs, Cosmetics and Disinfectants Act. So with OHSA and with the Foodstuffs Act, we actually work in combination with some of our South African Bureau of Standards codes as well. In our businesses, we should be paying attention to 3 specific codes. The first one being food hygiene management. The second one being the implementation and management of a hazard analysis and critical control point system. That's always a mouthful for me, but we call it HACCP system, or we also know to be the color coding system. And then the last one, which drives us inside of our preparation spaces specifically, as well as in our food service spaces, is the disinfectants and detergent disinfectants for use in the food industry, Bureau of Standards Code. So when it comes to Regulation 638 specifically, this whole legislation came about for 2 main reasons. So with the listeriosis outbreak that we had a few years ago, there was a very big need and a big demand for a governmental response to the outbreak as well. We had businesses who were struggling and suffering and trying to find ways to get themselves productive again after this massive attack of bacteria that infected quite a number of products. It had a financial impact on the retail sector. It had a financial impact on our manufacturing sector inside of our food-based environments. So Regulation 638 is there because it gives us an implementation of very stringent legal requirements for food businesses. It also replaces our previous regulation 962, and it was put into effect in June of 2018, and it has one of the biggest impacts on our food industry. It mandates, very importantly, that it is now the duty of the person in charge of the food premises to be trained in the principles and practices of food safety. And the question mark at the moment is that this one of training must be accredited. If we are qualified chefs, if we are qualified bakers, if we are qualified in our own respective fields, though that training was already accredited, there's a little bit of a discrepancy around what level of training is required and what training should be accredited in terms of addressing this particular regulation. In terms of this regulation, what is the actual impact? So effectively, if you are preparing, if you transport food, if you handle or sell food, you actually have to comply with this regulation 638 because it meets the minimum hygiene requirements. So before we even go into all of the impacts of that, if we look at our reality right now in terms of COVID, we're sitting in a situation where we have to acknowledge that because of unemployment and because of rising unemployment, because of the need to generate income, and because of our industries actually coming to a standstill to a large degree, there's actually been many small startup businesses and home-based businesses. Most of those businesses start off with food, but are we actually paying attention to those minimum hygiene requirements? So if we go to our different municipalities, we know that in those municipalities as well, we have to apply for a certificate of acceptability for food premises. Those are one of the things that we have to have a question mark on. So with food production and with the selling of foods, we have to consider what the effects of this regulation is on businesses around us as well. So what are some of the new requirements for this particular regulation? We've got lots of new innovations in food production. There's also been an uptake in foodborne diseases inside of our own environment that we operate in. Informal sector, we've had a number of markets being affected with foodborne illnesses, E. coli coming through, listeriosis cases still popping up every now and again. But importantly, in that particular environment of low-income communities, we have these vendors who trade at food markets. They've got local chisinyamas that are popping up in backyards. We've got roadside traders. We've got terminus traders. Every single one of these people is actually affected by Regulation 638, but we're not always aware of the impact of what we do. So with all of this, part of your requirements for this is that this regulation has been simplified to a great effect. It's now been reformatted, the grammar has been revised. We know that from a legal perspective and from a legislative perspective with acts in place, we love to use the word shall. That word of shall has actually been removed, and we've got the word must. So this legislation is telling us we must do things. It is making a lot more sense and it's far more logical for us to implement in our businesses. Some of the requirements that we need to look at is that very thing of your certificate of acceptability. As food businesses particularly, we would be granted our certificate of acceptability based on our premises. That is no longer the case. It is now based on an individual. So if you as the owner of a business is selling your business over, that certificate of acceptability will have to be reapplied for with the new person who comes in your space. We are not able to transfer that certificate from one business to another business owner. it is now directly linked to us as individuals inside of the food industry. Then we have some very notable changes for premises. And with these, it gives us very specific and very updated standards for food safety, which includes the facilities on our food premises. This regulation is now telling us your walls should be easy to clean. It's telling you that you should be using non-porous surfaces. So it is actually mandating what is acceptable and what is no longer acceptable in terms of the surfaces that we use, in terms of our equipment that we use as well, what our equipment should be made of, and even things like our utensils. It's now mandating that we should be using food safe materials. So we should no longer be using wooden chopping boards because of the increase of bacterial growth if it's not cleaned properly. But we should also be making sure that we use silicon-based products or silicon-based utensils and stainless steel-based utensils and equipment. With this as well, it's given us very specific standards and requirements for packaging of products. We are mandated to ensure that our labeling is in place. It all ties into the concept of traceability. We've got batch codes going out. We are able to trace and track what needs to happen, as much as it's telling us that what kind of product packaging we should be using, what is acceptable to food, what is not acceptable for food users. It also goes as far as to give us very specific temperatures for food storage in terms of what our frozen temperatures should be, what our prepared food temperatures are, all the way through guiding us step by step, making it far easier for us to maintain at least that minimum hygiene requirements to make sure that we've got food safe products for our customers. Then it also goes as far as telling us about what we need to do if we transport food, and it very distinctively tells us what the contraventions are, as well as what some of those penalties are, which include either jail time or pretty heavy financial penalties on the business, other than immediate closure if there is non-adherence to what the requirements are. Then it's also guiding us our standards and requirements for protective clothing. With all of that, it tells us what PPE we should be using. It helps us with our traceability. So this again links back to our packaging of products, but even more so, it's around traceability to our sources. If we think of the listeriosis outbreak, we know that it originated somewhere in South America and it was imported into the country, but we were not necessarily able to trace it immediately. Through batch codes, through our processes that we follow, we were eventually able to source which factories it was originating from and what the effects are in terms of that knock-on effect for the businesses involved as well. Then, very importantly for me, and what stands out the most for me, is around these specific duties. So before, as food handlers, we had the absolute responsibility to make sure that we had food safe products going out. That responsibility is now shifted from the food handler themselves, and it's been shifted towards the duties of the person involved, the person who is in charge of the food premises. It is now your responsibility as the supervisor, as the manager, as the team leader in that preparation space or in that restaurant or food space or hospitality space to make sure that the staff that work with you are and handling their food, that they have maintained all of those things. With all of that, we need to make sure that we follow healthy habits. So with COVID as well, we've gotten with So with the COVID processes that have gone on, we've had to make sure that we do follow hygiene practices and become far more specific around the hygiene practices that we have. We've got COVID protocols. Yes, we are at level 1. We are still sitting with 70% capacity to a large degree in most of our operating spaces, but we need to start moving forward and we need to start doing so safely. If I go back to the slide, this is an excerpt from our one program, our food handler program, but it also carries over into our other programs that we offer as well. So we go through the processes to ensure that we train those healthy habits. We go through hand washing practices, what should be done, what should not be done. We go through sanitizing procedures as well to ensure that when your staff go back into the environment, the people that work with you, they understand what their requirements are in terms of being a food handler as well. Then, as Omni, the question comes around how have we addressed how are we addressing and meeting the industry training needs? And with the interaction and the interrelation that we have with W&R CETA, as well as our existing clients and FoodWeb CETA, we've got two specific skills programs that we have on offer. The first one is our food handler program. It is a W&R CETA based program. It is specifically linked to the unit standard 114908, which is around applying food safety practices in a wholesale and retail outlet. And it addresses some specific needs that we have. The first need that we address in terms of that unit standard is cleaning and sanitizing, being able to maintain a clean and hygienic premises. We also look at what is required in terms of implementing safe food handling practices to prevent contamination and spoilage of food products through understanding what the different methods are that we have, through some of the food safety hazards and controls, and very importantly for all of us who have an element of resale of food or an element of food preparation and service, the temperatures of the food that we have for storage. We know that there are now very specific temperatures for frozen products. There are very specific temperatures to use for chilled products as well as for heated products. And when it comes to frozen products as well, our frozen products may not exceed a certain temperature when it comes to us having defrosted and refreezing. So there are little things that have been changed in what we need to do for Regulation 638, and those little things help us to meet the minimum standards of requirement, but it also gives us the ability to address having a food safe product or product that is safe for customer consumption at the end of the day. Our second offering that we have inside of our space sits around us addressing and meeting our industry training needs. It's the principles and practices of food safety and waste management, and this one is linked to our FoodWeb CETA. So with this particular program as well, this is a skills program that we offer. It takes a slightly longer period of time, so we're looking at a 6 to 8 week period. It has a number of credits which are attached, and with those credits, the individuals who go through this process are able to study towards one of our other qualifications that we offer as well. So with our skills program, food safety and waste management, we specifically look at what it entails to maintain a safe and secure wholesale and retail environment. We look at what are the good manufacturing processes, which are part and parcel of our food safety systems. We also look at what are the personal safety practices that we have to put into play as individuals in that food sensitive consumer product environment. And we also look to understand how we control our pests and how we control our waste materials inside of our environments as part of that food safety system. So this particular program, it's an integrated program. It includes theory, it has a classroom component, there is a workplace practical that is involved as well. There are formative assessments, there are summative assessments that happen. All of those things have an effect on what we do. So I'm going to have a quick look at our chat and see what some of those things are. I've missed quite a bit as we go. So Hawa has shared that she had some prior exposure to Regulation 918 once upon a time, and she's been wondering how some of these new differences have come in. I hope that I've given you a fair amount of understanding in where those differences are. Alison has shared that the acts have become more important with our current challenges and clients needing to have knowledge and levels of comfort knowing that they are compliant. Some of the other input that we've received so far. Pumeza sharing very good legislation indeed and very good insight. Lisa sharing that the regulation is the basic hygiene requirements that every food handling business should have in place to ensure minimum legal compliance We need continuous development and training. And Alison is sharing that it's an important change for our businesses. She's also sharing that it's no longer guidelines, but these are requirements. And I think that is one of the big important issues around Regulation 638. It's almost slipped in unnoticed. It's been around since June of 2018, but to date, it has still not had a full implementation because there is still the discrepancy and a concern around how to implement it and how to make sure that it is implemented equally across the different industries that we have. So Tanya is sharing very funnily that how many restaurants still use wooden boards to serve steaks and pizzas on. Very interesting indeed. Tanya, I think when it comes to the bread products, your pizza bases, we are relatively safe provided it is cleaned properly. As far as the meat on boards, that one does put a big question mark in terms of level of cleanliness. Thankfully, our restaurant industries now actually have a very good idea of hygiene and sanitation. We operate inside a very highly regulated areas. We've got our preparation policies. We've got our different sanitation processes that we have to follow. The machinery that we use, our dishwashing machines, all of those operate at far higher temperatures than what we are able to operate with using our hands. But it's around making sure that we are responsible in how we do things and how we ensure that those things go on. Lisa is also sharing it's our collective responsibility to drive excellence in our industry. I would totally agree with that. And there was an Jay Foster. Thank you for summarizing so clearly. My pleasure. I hope it gives you a good indication of where your own business is at this point in time, and that we are able to work with each other to move forward. Some of the other things here. How shares and how often do audits by Department of Health take place though, and how is this regulation being enforced through regular audits? How a part of our safety audits that we go through with occupational health and safety does require that we have those audits having gone through. The big challenge for us is that we never know when Department of Health walks in unless it's something that's been specifically reported. But as a food business, we have to ensure that we are continually compliant, that we are completely following all our regulations all of the time. Tanya, I do agree that the cost of all of these things are very debilitating. But if we look at what we do when we start our businesses or when we begin our processes, we know we have to go through an annual HACCP check. Part and parcel of our HACCP check is the chemicals that we use, the equipment that we are using, the safety processes that we follow. All of those added up make it far more agreeable to businesses when we are able to approach things from a bit-by-bit basis rather than all-encompassing, you have to do it now in this particular way. The effect of this on the business, on all businesses, that the Regulation 638 is coming into effect from an immediate perspective. The implementation of training, you have as a food business a period of 12 months to ensure that your training needs are met and that everybody in your business is aware of what needs to be done. The challenge comes in that the accreditation of the training is where the question mark lies in. If, like I said earlier on, those of us who are qualified in our industry, who follow those practices on a day-to-day basis, are effectively trained with accredited providers, so we have accredited training. The realization or the recognition of our training is under scrutiny in terms of what is the actual requirements for all of that. And this is where we've come in from our side, specifically looking at the food handler program with wholesale and retail, because it addresses those specific needs of what the people inside of our businesses are doing on a day-to-day basis that can affect the quality of the food that we sell, as well as the quality of food that we prepare. So as we move over, I'm going to move on to our next screen. And we move on to the next part of our key learning and some of the things that we do. So in our food spaces, we have different skills development initiatives. I've spoken earlier on about our Mauriceburger facility, which is a customized facility. We have a bakery on site. It is a commercial bakery. It is completely kitted out that anybody who learns in there has the skill ability to move over. So the first video that I'm going to share with you now is from one of our learners who's gone through our program. Yeah. So as we move on, our facility has been in existence for the last 3 years, and with that, we've actually had quite a number of learners coming through. So part of our skills development has been outreach into our community in Mauriceburg. We've also had outreach into the greater West Coast area. So we've had learners from Veldrift and Lambert's Bay joining us as well. And we've also had learners from Cape Town joining us for different programs. So here again, some of the learners that have gone through our different skills development programs, the majority of them go through our basics of bread and baking or bread and flour confectionery program. This helps us to help prepare them for the workplace. They go through a program where they learn safety practices on the one side, and with those safety practices, we take them through commercial production of breads, of bread roll products, as well as sweet dough products. So what can we offer you and your learners?
Mario, we have no volume on our side.
Okay, sorry, I'm going to stop there quickly and reshare. It's all right, we've figured it out already. Did you hear?
There's a lot of my students in South Africa that's jobless, and there's actually a high demand for bakers because in any food industry there's an opportunity for a baker position to be available. I also think that come from a underprivileged, disadvantaged community, you get such an opportunity. You can really, it's a foundation, and you can really grow from there. And it's also good earnings. You can actually earn a good salary. So there's a good career opportunities overseas, and it's very interesting. It's a scarce a skill.
But now it's frozen.
More to do with dough fermentation. So they learn how to make basic breads with white and brown, and also some specialty breads. And they also learn how to do various rolls like soft rolls and crispy rolls. We also give them opportunity to do a little bit of the confectionery side. They will learn how to do the basic sponge and products like scones and muffins. Um, they also learn how to bake from scratch and how to bake with different types of flours and also premixes as well, frozen to bake products.
All right, so the previous slide was our master baker giving a brief introduction to what we do with some of our learners and what we can offer our learners. One of the added advantages of our space is that we do have accommodation as well, and we've got a limited number of learners that can be accommodated at a time, with all the meals being included as well. It's time for us to look at our giveaway. So in my session, I've been given the advantage or given the opportunity to hand somebody a Mandela Legacy book at Omni HR Consulting. We are very proud to be associated with this book, and we're going to ask you a quick question. Alison, I'm going to ask you to manage the chat and see who's the first person to respond to the question that I'm about to ask before we move on to the next session. So the question that I'm going to pose is, what new regulation affects our hospitality and retail industry the most? What new regulation affects our hospitality and retail industry the most? And I think I have an idea of who the winner is, but I'm going to leave it to Alison to give me the correct person on the chat. So fastest finger first, what was the new regulation that affects our new hospitality and retail industry the most? And we're going to now continue with what else we can do. So part of our facility and part of what we are offering is, Alison has shared, we do have a winner. Our winner for the Madiba Legacy book is Tanya Reeves. So Tanya, thank you very, very much. Well done on jumping in first, quickest finger for our giveaway. So at Omni, we've got a very big responsibility and we've got a very big drive towards work integrated learning. With work integrated learning as well, we do feature work integrated learning across all of the different streams that we offer, and we partner with businesses to ensure that we offer the best possible experience for our learners from a training perspective as well as inside of their workplace perspective. Other than the offerings that we have with Food Bev CETA, we do have a partnership and an offering which ties in with Services CETA as well. And I'm going to play a short introduction video to our hospitality management program that we offer. From learning in the restaurant side, we actually look at our hospitality programs because we need to start upskilling individuals in what they do in terms of how to run the restaurant, as well as the other management skills. We're sitting in a space here where in the great vicinity, hospitality is a big part of what we do. In that, we've got individuals working in the space who very seldom have the ability to do certain things or have the ability to interact with customers. So with our hospitality management program, we look at things like customer service, where we look at training how to do customer service, as well as how to actually work in the kitchen, how we deal with front of house, how we deal with customer complaints. So we offer programs where we look at assertiveness, where we need to have people that be able to assert themselves and be confident about themselves, but we also look at it from the other side where we're dealing with public.
And in dealing with conflict, we need to be able to understand who that person is, how they communicate, the best way that we can communicate with them, and also how we interact with them and deal with any problems that may come.
I'm Stephanie. I'm currently an admin assistant at Burger. A part of that, I'm helping out in the restaurant, in the kitchen, where the evening. Wat ik alles hier geleerd heb, was geweest om in de bakkerij te werken, om in die kompuis uit te jagen en om in een restaurant als een waiter te wees. Wat heb ik in jullie geleerd van as 'n persoon? Die feit dat ek basis baie dinge geleer het van die beweeswerk. En eendag as ek weggaan van hierdie plek af, dan weet ek kan alle dinge kan ek saamvat na 'n ander besigheid toe en dan kan ek dit daar.
Yeah. So with our work integrated learning programs as well, most of these programs run over the period of a year. And with those programs running, we have this also integrated programs of classroom-based training broken into different learning programs, as well as workplace experience. With our environment at Mauritzburger, we offer them restaurant experience, kitchen experience, as well as a little bit of management and background experience over and above working with customers on a day-to-day basis. The best part of working in, or best part for me about this work integrated learning and our business actually sits with the successes of some of our learners that we have. So over the last few years of interacting, I've had 3 specific learners that have stood out quite distinctively in terms of what they've achieved inside of the business and where they come from and what they've moved on to do. So on the screen right now with the question page, I'm sharing 2 specific learners. The third learner is a lady who was unemployed, came to us out of Lambert's Bay, finished her learning program with us, and then went back into her home space. Not having an income, she then started her own business, taking what she learned with us, starting with breads and rolls, moving on to the sweet dough products, and she's now at a point where she's creating different products across the different ranges for order, as well as supporting her family through the process from a financial perspective. On the left-hand side of your screen, my learner there, Love, he went on from us, went back into ShopRite Checkers and worked with them for a long time before he decided to take the leap and go forward and learn some hospitality. And he's currently studying at Boerland College out in Stellenbosch, doing a hospitality management diploma. Then the gentleman on the other side of your screen has had me in many, gave me a good few laughs, but he's also still constantly in contact. He's very proud of the fact that he came to us having registered a bakery business, not knowing anything about baking, and he has recently, in the last couple of weeks, launched 2 lines of biscuits with different offerings in different flavors, and he's also moved on to doing specialty cakes. So here he's very proudly displaying his frozen cake and what he's about on that space. So the interaction that we have with our learners, it's important for us that it's not just about skill. It's not just about making sure that they understand what all the requirements are behind running their businesses, from setting up and budgeting to understanding the legal perspective, as well as the preparation side and doing things properly. It's around working with them holistically so that they are able to move forward. We bring learners in who have worked or been in very challenging environments, who've had very challenging experiences, and through working with them, through engaging with them, through interacting with them and teaching them, we can see them develop from a confidence perspective on the one side, as well as from a growth perspective. For them to come back to us and say, you've made a difference, is an even bigger achievement than knowing that they've just achieved from an academic perspective or having achieved success in the system. So our final slide that I'm sharing with you is our contact slide that you will see throughout the day. We've had some amazing feedback. I'm coming to the end of my session. So if there are any questions, I'm going to change over to the chat so we can have a look and see some of the comments and run through those. And from there, take a look and see what else we can do for you from our side. So as we go back into the chat, I'm going to activate my camera as well, looking a little bit more relaxed than in the video, all dressed up in the bakery, making sure that we follow all our PPE requirements. As we go through and have a look, Alison, I think it would be great for people to see this in person at Mauriceburger and sample the goods that the learners are making in the restaurant. Our Mauriceburger facility is open from Tuesdays all the way through to Saturdays. The products that the learners make are available for you for sale inside of the deli. You're also able to have a walk around and see what all we do and how we do things in the space. And you get to interact with some of the learners who have gone through the program who've also been employed into the business. I'm seeing from Tanya, I would like to donate my book to one of your most deserving baking students. Thank you very much, Tanya. I will have a discussion and see who would be the most deserving in this aspect for learners. Alison, I forgot to do that earlier on. Alison is our curator for this chat. She, from her side, is available to chat offline for about the different initiatives. It's all around how we can partner with you to either develop the people inside of your own business. Alternatively, if you're willing to sponsor individuals from outside of your business and offer them the opportunity, we would gladly walk the path and partner with you to do all of that. There's again messages, the videos that we've shared today will be available in the viewing room. Lisa is sharing, I think this is some of the feedback from what we were doing, one was discussing earlier on. Alison has shared feedback on the program has allowed many learners to become employed or self-employed and to make a difference in their own lives. I think it's important that we also acknowledge that as much as we've given them the skills, it is for them to take that opportunity and move on to starting their own business. The upside is that many of them have come back to me, especially where they've started their own businesses and have asked for mentorship or for further assistance to help them moving along as well. So Lisa sharing, thank you, Mario, heartwarming and great to see. Impact from compliance to skill to entrepreneurship. And J.U. Foster, glad I joined. Thank you, Mario. Not only know your stuff. Awesome, Jay. I hope you've enjoyed yourself throughout the session. We're moving over onto our next track now with Pumeza. And thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your engagement throughout the session and for your input in what we have done. I trust you've enjoyed, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Have a great day.